Misha, how's it going? Cajun Geek here. And here's a video that's been 3 days in the making, a bunch of rewrites and a bunch of updates, but here we go. We're going to be talking about the update to the Prohibited Activities and account penalty policy that Square Enix put out just the other day, along with an update from the global community producer, who provided some clarifications on the Prohibited Activities changes. But before we get into things, I stream over on Twitch every Wednesday, Tuesday, and Sunday morning. Find a link to my channel along with my stream schedule in the description below. So Misha, let's hop into it. So on the 27th of October, we got an update to the Prohibited Activities in Final Fantasy XIV and account penalty policy. Basically, we saw the addition of 2 prohibited activities related to the Party Finder as countermeasures against vendors of real money trading, or RMT. This update was in response to RMT vendors repeatedly creating fraudulent recruiting listings in the Party Finder. If you've been playing the game recently, been using the Party Finder, I've seen a ton of Party Finder listings under the Dungeon Roulette duty. These were essentially RMT vendors looking to either sell gil or sell content clears and loot. These changes to what is acceptable to use of the Party Finder is to combat these RMT vendors. So the first addition we see is the advertising offered to help clear content to help earn loot, etc. via the Party Finder. To sum this up simply, you cannot sell clears for content and or loot. They give some examples that, basically saying if you're attempting to sell clears or sell for loot, that is going to be unacceptable. But if you offer to pay individuals for clears or pay people to help you with clears, that is acceptable. The next change is other solicitations that fall far outside of the intended purpose of the Duty Finder. Simply put, you have to keep the advertised Party Finder category to what you're doing. So if you're advertising a raid, it needs to be a raid. If you're advertising Dungeon Roulette leveling, then it needs to be that. Exception to this is the other category, in which they give some additional examples such as promoting player events, housing related promotions, advertising for the purchase sale of items, recruitment of members for community groups such as link shells and free companies that can use the other category. Everything else has to match the category that you're using it for. They did go on to say and apologized for the relatively restrictive nature of these changes compared to how Party Finder was used before up until now, but that this was needed considering that it's a quicker means of preventing extraordinary long investigation paths that they had to do prior in order to confirm if a Party Finder posting was an RMT and fraudulent in manner. So the next items up are adjustments to the Prohibited Activities documentation for clarification and addition of prohibited activities that were previously announced. To sum it up, they basically added a lot of examples, along with differentiating between stalking and improper following, as well as details regarding instruction of play has been updated for clarity with additional information and adjustments. And where we see some additional explanations and examples are under the communication related conflicts. Now, shortly after this update, this got a lot of questions started to be asking by a lot of players, and Square Enix realized that. And then last night on the 28th, we got a posting from the global community producer Toshio Morochi, aka FoxClaw. Now, without getting ahead, we're going to go over some of the detailed explanation and examples specifically to the stalking and the following, and then we're going to go over the expressions that compel a playing style under nuisance behavior that required additional clarification from FoxClaw. Here on screen, you see the examples that are underneath this, expressions that compel a playing style. And at first, it is a bit confusing because basically you see the top statement that is a violation. They are more direct and almost rude, versus the non-violation is more of a question format that the person should be putting forth. So in the follow-up, FoxClaw states that we saw concerns that based on examples of expressions that compel a playing style under nuisance behavior, players may not be able to say anything at all or have any means of offering advice. The problem lies with attitudes such as "my opinion is an absolute, anyone who doesn't listen is wrong," or behaviors accompanied by arrogant, oppressive speech and conduct. Exchanging opinions is perfectly fine, as it's only natural that those receiving the advice will have their own ideas and opinions. FoxClaw does go on to say that communication is not black and white, and the idea that offering a suggestion will be immediately equated to compelling a playstyle is too extreme. And basically summed it up is that as long as both players are responsive and accepting of each other's opinion and are willing to work together, there is no need to file a report, or is there a violation. However, if it's met with discourse or attitude, then it is enough for there to be a report, aka a violation. Additionally, he offers that there is the option to also abandon the duty, disband should you feel the other player is unwilling to accept your differences, as well as the option for the person feeling at odds with the group to leave the party if they feel necessary. Lastly, he says using these various options at your disposal rather than being fixated with offering advice or communicating options is crucial in circumventing conflicts before they become overblown. And I agree with him wholeheartedly. As players, we should be willing to offer advice to new players, even veteran players, if they may be missing something. But even as veteran players and as new players, we should be willing to accept advice so that we can better ourselves. But if you feel that the advice is not good or that it's not a conductive situation to retort, you have the option to back out and you should not receive any penalty for it. Now, going back to the post on the 27th and basically looking at the prohibited activities policy, see that they've updated as well as provided examples for both stalking as well as following players. You can read the examples for yourselves, but bottom line, under stalking, there's a section that states attempting to make contact in-game with someone despite official authorities forbidding contact with them in the real life is considered prohibited activities. Bottom line, if someone has a restraining order or no contact order against you in real life from the police, authorities, etc., and you attempt to contact them in game, a report can be filed, a penalty can be put against you. In fact, they can even go as far as to put an in-game restraining order. And should you try to circumvent that, aka create another character, another account to contact that person, this can result in severe penalties, including up to permanent ban of your account. Next up, under the improper following, under nuisance behavior, bottom line, they said following a player for a long period of time is considered stalking, as mentioned in above harassment section. The act of improper following is limited to when a player follows another around in a particular location. To take note on all these examples, there's this one little blurb that states, please note Square Enix may conduct investigations and issue a penalty in its discretion, even if a report has not been filed, if the act was found being conducted in public areas such as Say and Shout, in town, city, field areas, or online/streaming services. Going back to the update from FoxClaw, basically he summed it up in a nutshell. If you've been playing without incurring any violations, and of course without receiving any penalties, then there will be no problem with playing as you usually do and remaining considerate of others. So to sum it up, the update the other day on the 27th was just the RMT prohibited activities, as well as better clarification and examples for all of the prohibited activities. Lastly, he does go on to touch on the selling of clears being prohibited. Bottom line, due to the RMT vendor situation, they had to prohibit the advertising of mercenary activities and party finders, aka selling content clears, but they are allowing the recruitment for mercenary activities in the party finder, but recruiting for mercenaries is not prohibited. So hopefully this gives you a good understanding of what was changed the other day and what Square Enix is trying to do. Bottom line, if you've been playing and haven't received any penalties, you're doing good and you're abiding by the rules. If you're unsure, read the policy, read the example. Well, that wraps it up for this video. If you found this helpful in any way, please consider giving it a like, and I'll see you all later. In the meantime, mes chers, you have a great day, yeah.